も混ぜろや、こら!
You know what's coming, looking at the title, and I'm pretty sure you're pumped up to see my list of top 20 overpowered main characters. This list won't be ranking them because, quite frankly, it's an exercise in futility trying to rank some characters against each other. This is especially true when we reach the upper tiers. Oh, and obviously, spoilers abound, but I'll try to keep things not as blatant for those who still want to be surprised when watching said shows. And lastly, we're talking actual combat skills and arsenals here, so no super geniuses or the like. Sorry, Sora and Shiro. Let's see if your favourite characters make the list then. Starting off the list, we have Kirito. Possibly one of the faces of overpowered protagonists in the early part of the 2010s, you know we're in for a list of titans if this guy is at the very bottom. Indeed, Kirito has a whole arsenal of skills at his disposal. Being an expert gamer has its perks, and in the world of virtual reality, few can match Kirito. And let's not even talk about that embarrassing stint at the first part of Ordinal Scale. Being at the bottom of the list means that he's relatively tame compared to everyone else. Indeed, Kirito's not invincible by any means, and whilst he's got a whole bag of tricks and access to some of the most overpowered hacks, he still plays within the system. He's at his strongest at the end of Alicization, but even that final fight is something that he, with all of the godlike system powers he had control of, couldn't overcome on his own. Now before we continue, let's take time to thank today's sponsor, Snowbreak Containment Zone. It combines a cool looking sci-fi world and setting with some exciting gameplay that will always keep you on the edge of your seats. I'm talking fast-paced action that puts a lot of focus on skill combos, your team composition, and challenging foes that require you to constantly adjust your plays on the fly. Given the sheer arsenal and the number of characters for you to use and tinker with, there's room for limitless possibilities. And if you've been here before in the pre-release, I've got some good news. The team's taken some of the feedback and added a lot of improvements since then, so you can join a much improved version of the game. Gameplay runs way smoother now, and a new cover system to help out against the more challenging bosses, creating a much more dynamic combat experience for both rookies and veterans of the genre to enjoy. Best of all, open beta testers get an SSR for free after completing the 5th chapter of the story. Not only that though, they also get this really cool sniper rifle and a Yao skin after a 14-day login event. Another cool thing is that this game supports cross-platform play, and that'll allow me to spend a lot of fun hours on end with my friends who usually play on a PC. Snowbreak Containment Zone seeks to combine a lot of what we love about anime. The sci-fi world, fast blitzing action, top-tier waifu characters, and a lot of customization and design options. Download Snowbreak Containment Zone now and claim your free SSR character. Just use my gift code and follow the links in the description to take the plunge into the containment zones. We can't have a list of overpowered characters featuring Kirito without including his partner in crime, Tatsuya. I remember those days when Dengeki would keep promoting Sao and Mahoka together. It's not a surprise the company kept going with that pairing. The two shows aired quite close to each other and both starred a lead that's rather aloof and overpowered in their own universe. However, Tatsuya definitely trumps Kirito in terms of being overpowered. This is a guy who's done it all. Master strategist, genius engineer, and unmatched soldier. This is a guy who literally can look a sniper in the eye and win a shootout using his trusty handgun. A guy who can revive others, create and fire off the equivalent of a nuclear weapon from the comforts of a base, and even bring himself back from the dead. Mahoka is simply full of his exploits, and it's quite amazing how it's this kind of overpowered monster that's being underestimated. There's nothing that can stop a determined Tatsuya, and if you're one of the unfortunate souls thinking of harming his sister, you've just signed your death warrant. And while we're on the topic of the 2010s, we move on to a less expected overpowered character with Madoka Ganame. Back in those days, Madoka was really big. However, there's not a lot of people who had the pink protagonist as their undisputed favourite amongst the girls. I mean, that's to be expected, as for the majority of the story that we see, Madoka ends up being one of the most passive main characters in a show full of action girls. But once we get to the latter parts and the mysteries start getting resolved, there's no doubt that if there's a character that's crazy powerful in this show, it's Madoka. I think I've done enough spoiling as it is, so I implore you to watch this masterpiece of the 2010s. But if you have watched the show already, I'm sure you'll agree with me when I say that this cute, friendly girl is quite literally godlike in power. In terms of power scaling in the TV series, nothing can come close to Madoka. Beware the nice ones indeed.
あなたは私が受け止めてあげるから。
Why not proceed with another product of the era? Accelerator's pretty cool, right? The Ace Certain series has been very influential in my growth as an anime fan. It's all the rage in the 2000s to the early 20s, and while it's super niche these days, it did bring us all the way to the excellent Railgun T a few years ago. Accelerator's someone who's come a long way, with a character development arc that spans multiple seasons and spin-offs. One thing that hasn't changed is the fact that he's overpowered as hell. The title of being the strongest Academy City Esper isn't for show. No, not by any means. His powers may seem simple at first glance, being the ability to redirect attacks if we're going to oversimplify in layman's terms. However, when you do see the implications of that and how he applies it to great effect, it is nothing short of amazing. Oh, and he still gets a slew of other cool powers as the show proceeds, so there's that too. Here's to one of the craziest overpowered characters in the show's insanely large cast of characters. We can't talk about the 2010s light novels without mentioning one of the most popular ones from around that time. No Game, No Life. Oops, what I'm looking at for this entry is actually the predecessor, the far less popular Problem Children Are Coming From Another World, and its protagonist Izayoi. Before isekai was the cool new trend in town, there's this lesser known predecessor to No Game No Life. Izayoi's powers are relatively simple. If I told you it's just super strength at its core, would you believe that this guy's that overpowered? Now, what if I told you it's like Index's Doma and has the power to just break through everyone else's powers? Yeah, that's what we're talking about, right? Izayoi uses this power to great effect in the series, and he wastes no time making a strong first impression, defeating a water god just as soon as he gets transported into Little Garden. Combining that overpowered skill with his wits and intellect, and you can see clearly why this guy's a force to be reckoned with. Jin Mori gets the honor of resuming the list. Jin Mori is an interesting case. He doesn't win all his on-screen fights for one, but he's one hell of a fighter, and in the long run, especially given his revealed identity in the latter part of the story, we eventually saw how broken he can really be. In a show like God of High School, which features as wild of a martial arts tourney as they can go, that's saying something. The series does a great job showcasing its protagonist's godly powers, and with each revelation on what Jin has locked within himself, the power scaling just goes through the roof. Inhuman talent, unmatched fighting skill, and a heart that just refuses to give up. Not to mention the Monkey King powers that push their things past their limits. I do think that Jin Mori deserves some love despite the anime adaptation of God of High School having its fair share of issues. In a similar vein, let's talk MASH. How have you been enjoying Mashal so far? It's a pretty fun show all around, right? It's got a newcomer to the club of overpowered protagonists in MASH, who apparently took lessons from his numerous predecessors who can overcome magic with physical tools. It took some training from hell, but here we have a character who may as well be using magical powers with how impressive his techniques look. One of the fun parts in watching Mashal is to see Mash's creativity in action. His entire arsenal of physical techniques is truly a joy to witness, and I just can't get enough of how over the top everything is. It takes a certain level of special to push one's physical gifts beyond their limit, but if you're up for things like that, Mash Burn Dead is your guy. What better follow-up to Mash than the man himself, Saitama? If we're talking where a character stands in the scaling of his own universe, I know that Saitama should be way further into the list. He's the epitome of overpowered, even in his world of superheroes and supervillains. I don't think anyone in the One Punch Man world can outdo him, who only needs one punch, literally, to defeat his enemies. However, I feel talking about Saitama's great follow-up to MASH due to the similar nature of their fighting styles and origins. Saitama's entire shtick is that he's the pinnacle of training from hell, and what happens when someone gets pushed beyond his limits. Or at least that's what we're made to believe in, that he attained everything through sheer training and putting himself through hell for a year. So watch out, Saitama on any ordinary day may seem goofy and listless. However, Beyond that exterior lies the strongest hero in the universe. Mob then comes to mind after Saitama. Frankly speaking, it feels like a downgrade in power scaling going from Saitama to Mob, even if they're quite similar characters. Similar disposition with a similar heart for justice, and both are just as impressive in their own series. While Mob doesn't always defeat everyone in one hit, he's also pretty much one of the most powerful espers in the world of Mob Psycho, capable of turning into an engine of destruction at a moment's notice. You just have to push the wrong buttons, and that's something I highly advise against. Mob has repeatedly proven that he's just crazy overpowered in his own series, and few can challenge him when his ultimate form comes out. That's something that you have to witness for yourself. From unassuming and nice hero to a possible monster within, it's pretty cool how the same creator managed to take two characters with quite similar dispositions and make them so unique from each other.
何の力もないんだ。持ってないんだよ。
While we have epic stories to follow from Saitama and Mob's anime, Saiki's anime takes a way more light-hearted approach. Saiki is in a lot of ways very similar to Mob. Both have psychic powers and both have resolved to put these powers to good use. However, the way their anime are presented are completely different, and it takes a way more comedic turn for the disastrous life of Saiki K. Regardless, I think that going the route of comedy and parody is a pretty good way to present a character who's pretty much a god amongst mortals. While there are other characters with powers in the series, not a lot of them can hold a candle to Saiki in terms of power, or just the sheer arsenal. Seriously, Saiki's list of powers is insane and can put a number of isekai heroes to shame. Teleportation, shape-shifting, cloning, you name it. So if you're up to seeing our protagonist get put into compromising situations with those powers that he never wanted, Disastrous Life of Saiki K is a good title for some quick laughs. And while we're chilling and going for some school shows, here's Goro Sensei from Assassination Classroom. Assassination Classroom is a pretty simple show. In a nutshell, a group of students must work together in order to assassinate their teacher, some big octopus assassin, in order to save the world. Now, it's simple enough on paper, nigh impossible in practice though. I mean, Goro Sensei's as tough as it goes in the world of Assassination Classroom, pretty much a character who's impossible to kill due to all the abilities and powers he possesses. Whatever plan you have in mind, you know for sure that Goro Sensei is gonna have a way out of it. You can't outspeed him, you can't outsmart him, and you sure as hell can't beat him in straight up fighting. So what's left? There's a reason even the resources and the power of the world's governments and the strongest foes with supernatural powers find themselves at their wits' end trying to tackle the Goro Sensei problem. And the journey to finish that insane task is what makes Assassination Classroom such a fun watch. Another polarizing webtoon adaptation is Noblesse, but hey, it gave us another overpowered character in Rai. Not much needs to be said about Noblesse as an anime. It's not exactly a great adaptation, and coming months after God of High School, that's a bummer. Still, if there's one thing that the anime at least showcased, it's just how powerful the main character, Rai, is. Rai comes from a lineage of vampiric beings, but he's just a noble. He's the titular Noblesse, the strongest member of the entire race, serving as the protector, judge, and executioner for the group of powerful beings. As such, Rai didn't disappoint in his performance. Noblesse has a lot of instances where he flexes his power and asserts his will against all who oppose him. He's the kind of character whose mere mention can send others trembling in fear. If we ever get to see more Noblesse anime, I don't expect the status quo to ever change. He stands as the strongest being in the entire series, and we all better get used to that moving forward. After Rai, we have what I feel is the Japanese counterpart, Anos. It feels just right to have Arnos here, as his overall feel as a character feels super similar to Rai, underworld lord main characters who spent time immemorial in deep slumber, waking up to find a world completely different from the one they'd left behind. Now they enter a world full of mortals who are underneath them, simply outclassed in any way imaginable. Just like Rai, Arnos holds unimaginable power that makes him pretty much god amongst men. This is someone who literally tosses a castle like it was nothing, or can kill without even putting his hands on someone, only to revive them just to repeat the process all over again. It's pretty crazy, and the only big difference is that Arnos does all of that while acting pretty smug himself. Then again, with how ahead he is in the competition, I don't see why Arnos wouldn't start to get arrogant. When you got power that great, it's good to be able to flex and bask in the moment. Let's take a trip to the bygone days for a while, where Alucard lurks and captures the heart of teenagers everywhere. If we're going to sum up edgy in one character, no doubt Alucard's the poster child for it back in the 2000s. It just fits his character so much, being this hyper badass who doesn't pull punches, slaying supernatural threats left and right as one of the most coolest imaginable anti-heroes. There's so much about Alucard that encapsulates the rebel culture of the 2000s, and of course, he gets the lion's share of broken powers in the Hellsing universe. And one thing Alucard does so well is to make those powers look as intimidating as possible. Alucard's the type of character who really lets his opponents know they're just going to get destroyed and there's no way around it. He's cruel, he's merciless, and he makes it known that you're completely helpless against him. Just the embodiment of cool if you're one of those 2000s teens.
60年前から何一つ変わっていない痩せっぽちのガキださあおいでクソガキ
A perennial favourite of anime fans from the old days in the 2010s is JoJo. It's got a lot of overpowered characters there, but I think it's time that we give Giorno some love. Giorno is the character that doesn't get talked about as much compared to a lot of big guns in the JoJo universe. So that's why for today, we'll be giving him his flowers, and he more than deserves it. JoJo has no shortage of crazy powerful powers, but gold experience at its full power really should be in the upper echelons. It holds power over life and can deliver some big time pummeling when needed. However, its true potential gets unlocked when it evolves into gold experience Requiem. It's here that its control over life gets pushed into overdrive, being capable of outright erasing anything and trapping foes in a death loop. It's pretty mind-blowing just thinking about it, so how's that for perspective? You know it's coming. Overpowered character list. It's time to take a tour to Isekai World, and we start off with Hajime. Ari Fioretta is a show that stands as a quintessential example of revenge power fantasy. Underdog boy gets betrayed, falls to near death, and survives through sheer edgy grit, becoming a monster stronger than anything the world's ever seen. I mentioned parts of this phenomenon in Alucard's entry, and I see Hajime as some sort of modern counterpart in that edgy teenager role model appeal, and he does this in an admittedly creative way. Yes, he ate monsters to attain the level of power he had, but a lot of it has to do with the genius use of the supposed weak power he's given, transmutation. Hajime may not like it, given that he primarily just uses his two guns, but he's an entire arsenal of magical weapons, and he knows how to use all of them to their full potential in ploughing his way through hordes of enemies and striking back against the world that betrayed him. Moving on, we have the plucky slime Rimuru. Just like Hajime, Rimuru had his humble beginnings. He had to crawl his way to the top, taking it one step at a time as he started off as a lowly slime. With each monster he consumes, he gets more abilities added to the ever-growing arsenal. Simple, but boy, the results speak for themselves. Looking at his state right now, as well as the length and influence he holds, you can tell he's been through a long journey. At this point, people have been crowning him the most overpowered character, and who can blame them? He's now become a being that's transcended all existence. We're talking universe-destroying potential. And here's the catch, he's actually not even at his peak if we're talking anime continuity. Light novel Rimuru has surpassed everything you can see in anime form, and let's not even mention his web novel form in the same breath. We cap off the isekai trip with Ainz. We can't exactly compare Rimuru to Ainz in a straight-up battle since their worlds operate differently. However, few can match the sheer fear and presence Ainz carries. If there's an overpowered character who certainly looks the part, Ainz is undoubtedly one of the best ones in the whole isekai genre. Ainz looks every part of a super scary overlord, pun intended there, who can easily crush the entire world under his finger should he find the desire to. He's impervious to damage, is a master combatant, and wields spells that turns enemy armies into fodder. Overlord, as a show, isn't solely carried by Ainz and people watching him wreck face, but it certainly is a super fun part of it. We approach the end of the list, and I'd like to feature Wang Ling. There's just something with Chinese IPs and their ridiculously overpowered characters. It's a thing that they just love, even more so than the Japanese, the way I see it. For those who aren't so attuned with the Chinese anime scene, however, Wang Ling is probably the name you might be familiar with. Daily life of Immortal King is easily available through platforms like Netflix after all. As for Wang himself, I mean, what can I say? His character profile states that he's the reincarnation of an immortal emperor who's traversed realms, gathering power and becoming even more transcendent with each one. Even when he wasn't at his peak, he was capable of demolishing demon lords with basic kicks and the like. Now, well, you can take a look at this wiki screenshot yourself and come to terms that such a being is trapped in the body of a high school boy. Daily life of Immortal King feels like a Chinese anime inspired by Psyche K or Mob Psycho, so it makes sense that its main character takes on a similar trajectory. Last but not least, we have Goku. Is Goku the strongest main character in anime? Can he be a match against all those crazy isekai protagonists? I mean, that's debatable, we can never know for real, but there's a reason why the whole "but can he beat Goku" joke has become a cultural trademark in the anime community. Goku's not the strongest being in his own universe, but he sure can give everyone a run for their money. This is a character with a slew of Super Saiyan forms that progressively get more and more broken, and cheating death isn't exactly anything special for him. I think that a list of the most overpowered main characters really deserves to close out with one of the biggest cultural icons of them all. One who can defeat gods, mind you. Also, one who seems to have no upper ceiling in terms of how strong he can really get. That was a handful, wasn't it? Now, I'd love to know which characters would make your version of this list. Who are your top 20 overpowered main characters? Tell me down in the comments section and go check the channel for more content if lists like this are to your liking. Don't forget to check out Snowbreak Containment Zone through the link in the description. It seeks to combine a lot of what we love about anime. This looks to be the next major hit in the mobile game world, and you better be there when it happens. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be waiting for you in the next one. See ya.